What's up, everyone? GSmith64 here with another episode of Fictional Characters in D&D. Today, we have the Red Reaper herself, that'll blow us away with her speed. The maiden with eyes of silver, the one and only Ruby Rose. Let's hop into it, shall we? So, the first couple things we have to talk about for this build is that it uses a fair bit of UA material, one technically homebrew item, and stuff from one of the latest books, Eberron, Rising from the Last War. When using these items, I make sure to mark the stuff in the video for you. That being said, though, let's go ahead and just get into the challenge of this build. So, as always, we rank the difficulty of the build. And instead of doing the old system we did Season 1, we're doing a new system for Season 2. Difficulty, build, RP, and difficulty of the RP. First, difficulty of the build, I rank it a 2 out of 5. It does involve some multi-classing. A couple levels in it, 2 to be exact. But it's nothing too crazy. Otherwise, we're just base class with a little bit of spice mixed in there. The spice menage. As for the difficulty of the RP, again, if you're going to try and stick to being Ruby, I rank it a 2 out of 5. Because at the end of the day, you're just a teenager who's trying to be an above-average kid, trying to help everyone in need, trying to help literally everyone in need. Even if it puts other people in danger, you want to help as many people as you can. So yeah, 2 out of 5. Now, new thing I'm going to add, what we're trying to achieve from the build. So, Ruby has some certain things we want to try and get from her repertoire. Her silver eyes, the power of her silver eyes, spoilers. Her insane Symbalance speed, I butcher that word every time, I don't know how to pronounce it. Well, technically 2 other things. Her aura protection, so to speak, so we don't need armor. Hint, it's an unarmored defense. And, of course, her Scythe. We want Crescent Rose. And so that's the technically one homebrew point, is Crescent Rose. We'll get to that much later in the build. That being said, though, let's hop into the race and stats. Race and stats. Starting off with the race, we'll be using one of the cool new sub-races for human. That comes from Eberron. We're going to be taking a dragon mark. What dragon mark in particular? The Mark of Passage. Because what the dragon marks do is they let you replace base human, get some spells for free, well, let you cast a spell for free, give you some extra little goodies that a normal human doesn't get, and access to more spells if you're a magic caster. Each dragon mark has access to additional spells that your class will then be able to take. So if you need a little more versatility in your spellcaster, because say you're going a really bad spellcaster, like Ranger or something, for example, and you need some more spells to take into it, Dragon Mark's a pretty good way to go about it. Top of that, Mark of Passage will give us +2 to Dex and +1 to our ability score improvement of our choice, which you either can put into Con or Wisdom in this case. We'll get to that in a minute, though, because the other thing we have to talk about at Dragon Marks is Dragon Marks can be anywhere on the body. For example, you could have your dragon mark on both of your eyes. Why would we want them on both of our eyes? Because that could represent our silver eyes. Because when you're using your dragon mark in any way, shape, or form, one of the quirks you could potentially have for it is that it glows and gives off dim light, like Ruby's eyes. Not quite to the extreme Ruby's eyes do when she uses her silver eyes, but it gets us there. It gets us started there anyways. But yeah, stats, as always, with the stats, I will be using point by all means feel free to roll, just use this as a base. Starting off, we want our Dex to be our most important stat, even though we're going to have one other stat at 14 as well. Dex is our most important stat starting at 14, because we'll be getting that +2 from Mark of Passage, making it a 16, +3 right out the gates, pretty solid. Next two most important stats will be our Wisdom and Constitution. You're going to make one of these 14, one of these 13. Really doesn't matter which one you do, because you're going to be putting that +1 you get from your mark of passage into the one that's a 13. So that way they are both 14. That way you both get +2 from both of those. Because you are going to be wisdom. And my thought process on why wisdom is the more important stat over intelligence is because wisdom always speaks to me like battle smarts and wise elderly knowledge, whereas intelligence is kind of like book smarts. And RWBY, no offense, is not a book smart kid. She's really good on the battlefield, really good at adapting to the situation, but book smarts, she is not. That being said, though, charisma will be our next highest stat at 12, because of course RWBY has that protagonist plot, charisma, meaning everyone listens to her. Or if they don't listen to her, they're wrong. They're in the wrong. Gotta have that protagonist charisma. So it's maybe not 15, but a 12 gets you there. Intelligence, again, like I said, not quite a dumb stat, but not an important stat. We're going to have it at a base 10. Just, again, wisdom, I think, is more battle smart, whereas intelligence is book smart. And last but not least, strength is going to be our dump stat. Now you may be asking, why the fuck is strength our dump stat if we're going to be using big-ass weapons? Because we're going to be using finesse weapons, and your aura, quote-unquote, boosts your human abilities to use other weapons. AKA, we're going to be using finesse weapons, so that way we don't have to have high strength even though we use big weapons. Next up, our background. We're going to go folk hero. The skills it gives us, maybe not the best options out there. Gives us animal handling and survival. I mean, not bad skills by any means, but maybe don't fit RWBY to a T there. But the background of folk hero fits RWBY pretty well. That's why we're going with that. On top of that, folk hero also gives us that lovely thing where we get an artisan tool proficiency of our choice. So you can either choose tinker's tools or smith tools. Both fit RWBY pretty well there. Really dealer's choice on that one. So then we're going to go into class and levels next. So let's get into that. So starting off with our class, I've hinted at it quite a bit, but if you haven't gotten it by now, we're going to be a ranger. Why a ranger? Ranger is pretty fucking close to what a hunter is in the RWBY universe. And so yeah, starting skills we're going to get from ranger are going to be athletics, investigation, and perception. If you want, you can change out that athletics for, say, stealth. Personally, we don't really need the stealth one, though, because at the end of the day, you're going to have a +5 into your dex if you do things right. So, getting up there in stealth, we'll still have a +5, because we won't have disadvantage on that from armor or anything. So, +5 isn't bad to stealth by any means. But yeah. Going to be a ranger, starting off level 1. This is where we're going to get into a lot of the UA stuff. Link will be in the description below, because we're going to be using a lot of the revised ranger stuff that isn't garbage. Otherwise, base ranger is trash and is bad, and we hate it. So instead of getting favorite enemy, we're going to get favorite foe, which, well, you know what that does? Gives us a whole bunch of free casts of Hunter's Mark, and gives us the spell for free so we don't have to learn it. I mean, we don't have spellcasting yet, but right now, 2 free casts of Hunter's Mark every long rest, that's pretty good. On top of that, we'll get Deft Explorer instead of Natural Explorer, and we're going to choose the Roving option. The Roving option will give us an additional 5 feet of movement. So, Mark of Passage has this lovely thing where it gives you an additional 5 feet of movement. So now, we're up to 40 feet of movement, and we're not done there, and that's going to get higher. But, for now, we're going to stick with Ranger. Dip it into level 2, we get some magic and a fighting style. Fighting style we're going to choose will be UA again. We're using the Druidic Warrior fighting style. It'll give us 2 cantrips from the Druid spell list. We'll choose Mending and Guidance, because the other fighting styles kind of suck ass. So, we're taking the Druidic fighting style, so that way we can kind of keep up the maintenance of our weapons, so to speak. If a weapon gets broken in combat, mending it. Make sure our weapon's operational. RWBY is a gun nut and weapon crazed. Mending helps keep it all together, making sure your weapon doesn't break. You gotta keep Crescent Rose in top-notch shape. Guidance, just kind of guiding your team to victory. You are the leader of the team. You gotta project that leadership onto them. On top of that, we're gonna gain 2 spells. because we only know 2 spells, not including Hunter's Mark, which we have for free due to Favorite Foe. Both the spells we're going to take, though, are not normally on the Druid's, or excuse me, on the Ranger spell list. These are the additional spells we are going to be getting from the Mark of Passage, which are Expeditious Retreat and Jump. Expeditious Retreat doubles your movement speed when you cast it on yourself. Jump doubles your jump speed. Why are we taking those? Pretty self-explanatory. We're going to be zooming around the fucking field, trying to be hit and run as much as possible. So Expeditious Retreat and Jump both amplify that. On top of that, one other thing I forgot to mention is that free spell we get from Mark of Passage is Misty Step. We get a free cast of that every day, and we're going to get more of those later. But for now, level 3, we are gaining a subclass, and we're going to go straight to Xanathar's Guide to Everything for that. Taking Monster Slayer. What does Monster Slayer do? Give us some extra spells. Yeah, not really too important, those extra spells, but it gives you an extra spell on every level, which is pretty nice, so you know even more spells. On top of that, it also fits the theme of hunting down the Grim. You know, you are a hunter in training. You want to make sure the Grim threat doesn't overrun the world. Until, you know, you find out the Grim have a leader, of course, that, the secret society of people have been hiding from the whole world for ages. But who would do that? That just seems silly. Oh, wait, that's the actual plot? Quickly go on to the next part. So, lastly for 3rd level, one of the cool things we're going to get is one more spell. And this is also from Xanathar's. It'll be Zephyr Strike. It allows you to strike an enemy and then immediately move away from them afterwards without provoking opportunity attacks. And that fits kind of RWBY's theme pretty well about speed and her fighting style, which is kind of hit and run or sit back and snipe. Which we'll get to that in a second. And then, on top of all that juiciness, we do gain even more from Primal Awareness. We'll get a couple more spells from that. But those spells are kind of eh. They're not bad. They don't really fit RWBY, though. But it is stuff you get for free, so we're not going to complain about it. Again, that is UA content there. Hey, Post-Production Smith coming in real quick. Just reminded you that I forgot to talk about 2 things real quick. Hunter's Sense and Slayer's Prey. Hunter's Sense is this wonderful ability you get from Monster Slayer, same with the Slayer's Prey, that lets you, as many times as you want, equal to your Wisdom modifier, pick an enemy within 60 feet, learn all of their resistances, immunities, and vulnerabilities. And what they are, if they have any. The reason you want this is because it's finding the weaknesses of the Grim as quickly as possible, so that way you can kill them as quickly as possible, informing your team of how to kill them. Slayer's Prey is an additional Hunter's Mark. It'll take a bonus action to cast, just like Hunter's Mark will, but once you have both of those on, because they stack, Slayer's Prey also adds a D6 the first time the target is hit that turn by you. So that gives you additional 2d6 every turn, which is pretty good. And you only can do that once every short or long rest, but if you need that extra damage, it's a good option to go to. Back to the video now. Level 4, we get an ASI, except psych! Fuck that ASI, we're going to take Crossbow Expert. We'll be using this with a heavy crossbow, because we're proficient in those due to Ranger. So that way we have the firing aspect of Crescent Rose down. Then, we can at this point also potentially, if your DM will allow it, gain the Scythe part of Crescent Rose. I personally converted over the Battle Scythe from 3.5 to 5th edition, link in the description, so that way you can have the Scythe part of Crescent Rose for combat. However, if your DM won't allow that, a good backup is a Rapier. Rapier is not exactly a War Scythe by any means, shape, or form, and Glaive in that is cool, but Glaive uses Strength, whereas Rapier uses Dex, and we don't really want to dip into Strength that much because we don't have the ASIs to spare. So, if your DM won't allow you to take a Battle Scythe or reflavor something into a Battle Scythe, Rapier will do just fine. It won't be Crescent Rose then, but you're kind of using a medieval Crescent Rose to begin with, using a heavy crossbow with Crossbow Expert, because Crossbow Expert will give us that lovely ability that we don't have to reload or take the load action on our crossbow anymore. So yeah, it'll suck if your DM doesn't allow it, but completely understandable why they wouldn't allow it. It is technically homebrew content. even if it was in a previous edition that I just converted over to 5th edition for y'all. 5th level comes around, and this one's a pretty big one for us. We're going to gain the extra attack and 2nd level spells. We get Zone of Truth for free from Monster Hunter, which is nice. And then we also choose to gain one more spell. We learn one more spell. And we're going to take another one of our mark spells. We're going to be taking Misty Step. Yeah, we already have a Misty Step for free, but why not have 2 more Misty Steps to get around? So that way we have 3 Misty Steps in our back pocket, or you can upcast one of your 1st level spells if you really want to. Zephyr Strike will get a little more damage. Your spells really aren't going to be your strong point here, though. I mean, you'll get a couple, but it's nothing like crazy. 6th level comes around, though, and since we're using UA stuff, we don't gain anything here other than some hit points from Ranger. We'll go into 7th level, and this is where we have finally unlocked our aura, so to speak. We are beginning our multi-class. We're going to dip a level on Monk to gain their version of Unarmored Defense, which uses Dex and Wisdom. The 2 stats we're already heavily invested in from Ranger, so it fits pretty well into this build, and again, that gives us our aura protection, so to speak. On top of this, we also do gain martial weapons from Monk, but since we're only going to be going 2 levels, it's really not that good. I mean, worst case scenario, if you get unarmed, you do have a D4 punch now, but it's not great. It's not bad by any means, but it's not good. So, level 8 will come around, and this we're going to take our 2nd and final level of Monk. And the only reason we're doing that is we're going to gain an additional 10 feet of movement per turn, making our total speed right now 50 feet per turn without dashing. And on top of that, if we really need to get somewhere fast, we do have 2 key points down. And we can use those 2 key points to dash or disengage as a bonus action. We can use 1 for each as a bonus action. So if you're in a pinch and you need to disengage, you don't have any spell slots to cast, your 2 key points are there kind of as like a safe haven, last-ditch resort to get you out of danger. Because again, we're kind of keeping up that hit-and-run strategy with RWBY. What I would personally recommend for the rest of this build is go the Rest Ranger. I've tried this build 3 different times, and at this point, adding more Monk onto the build only hinders it, because you really don't gain anything useful out of going Monk on anything else. I tried adding 4 levels of Monk to get that ability score improvement and getting a subclass. Kensei doesn't fit the build. I mean, if you really want to add 1 more level of Monk, you can. I don't recommend it, but if you are going to do it, I would recommend taking that in Shadow. Because Shadow then will allow you to cast Darkness, Pass Without Trace, essentially just give you a couple more spells to add a little more versatility to you to help you get out of dangerous situations. Again, it's not great, but I mean, if you really need something else on top of it, it's something, I guess. But you're better off just going Ranger the rest of the way, because that way you get more spell slots, more health, D10 instead of a D8, and you get some of those Ranger abilities. Again, Ranger abilities not great, but they are better if you're using the Ranger Revised, link in the description. That level 10 ability is a lot better, getting a free invisibility. It's pretty good. And also, this will give you access to Feral Senses if you stick 18 levels into a Ranger. Feral Senses will give us that lovely ability where we are much better at fighting invisible creatures. And, of course, we'll get all of our abilities for our subclass, which kind of help you hunt down the Grim and kill them better. Supernatural Defense, Magic User Nemesis, and Slayer's Counter. All really good things for taking on the Grim. Now, the one con to this build, and it's a pretty big con, I won't lie, is your bonus action economy is awful. Like, there is so many, you have way too many options for bonus action economy. You have key points you can potentially spend. You have your Hunter's Prey, Hunter's Mark, Misty Step, a couple other spells as bonus action, which is not a bad thing, but just it can be a little overwhelming if you aren't prepared for it. You're going to have a lot of options for bonus action, and the other big con of this build is that in order to get that big boy damage, it's going to take a couple turns of setup, because 2 Hunter's Marks both take a bonus action to cast, as same with Hunter's Prey. So that's potentially 3 turns you're trying to set that up. Granted, each turn it's going to get better and better, but it's still going to hurt you, at least temporarily. That being said, though, that's the build, at least the first 8 levels. That being said, though, I've been your host, GSmith64, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace!